we go. All right, so example of a trig equation that you're going to have to, tonight, use the calculator for. And let's just start with, just so I can review real quick, let's start with 2 sine x is equal to 3. And let's say my directions say solve for x. Just solve for x. Solve for x. Oh, well, heck, we'll go from 0 to 2 pi. Are you having problems there, Heidi?
You got 99.
Yeah. That's everything. Holy crap. Okay, so this one right here, there's a little bit of fluff on it, not much, but let me explain this because I want to review from yesterday. When you do your inverse trig ratios, you had y equals inverse sine x, you had y equals inverse cosine x, and you had y equals inverse tangent x. These are the only 3 you need to really be responsible for. You do when you get to Calc 2 and Calc 3, you start doing inverse secant, inverse cosecant, inverse cotangent, but really it's just extra. You need to know the domain and range here. So let's see if you paid attention yesterday. What was the domain for inverse sine? -1 to 1. Inverse sine. Inverse sine. That's really important because if you look at this first example we're about to do, everybody look at this, 2 sine x is equal to 3. 2 sine x is equal to 3. What are you going to do first, Billy?
2. Yeah.
Divide by 2. And then Billy.
Yeah.
Sine x is equal to 3/2. What am I going to do next?
Inverse sine.
All right, so I'm going to do the inverse sine. Now I'm going to explain this right now. Okay? You do not have to show this step, but here's what's happening. You're taking the inverse sine of both sides. And today that's important. You're actually going to have to write part of this. You won't have to show it all. I'll show you which part you're going to write. And inverse sine does what to the sine? Cancel. I will let you go ahead and put x equals inverse sine of 3/2. You can skip this middle part. You don't need to write that, but you do need to write inverse sine of 3/2. Now, Billy, can you tell me what the answer is for inverse sine of 3/2?
Calculator.
No, you can't. No calculator.
Then I can't.
We just did it. We just got done doing it in the homework. Yes, we just got done doing it. Mason, tell him. No. You know what it is? We just got done doing it.
Sine of 2/3.
There's no roots or anything though, so.
Sine of 2/3.
Make it
Bigger
too
than
hard.
1. No, it's not.
Alexis? Bigger than 1. Thank you.
Okay, never mind.
Well, you just said it has no roots in it, so I don't know what that
No,
means.
after that I said it's bigger than 1.
Okay, so what does that mean then?
I don't know.
You give up.
No solution.
No solution. So, look over here, guys. Domain for inverse sine. If it's not between -1 and 1, you can't do it. It's no solution. You can't do the inverse sine of something bigger than -1 or something smaller than -1 and something bigger than 1. Same thing is true for inverse cosine. Now, inverse tangent,
That's all.
fair game all day. Yes, it's all real numbers. Definitely. Now, for your quiz tomorrow. Actually, no, sorry, Friday. Sorry. For your quiz tomorrow, Friday. I'm saying tomorrow. This part, if you don't know, you will fail the quiz. Literally, you'll miss the whole second half of the quiz and you'll get a 50. You have to know the ranges. Does anybody remember the range for inverse sine? Because it's going to base whether or not you can do tonight. It's -π/2 to π/2. That's a -π/2. What about for inverse cosine? Not the same thing. 0 to pi. Thank you very much. You're going to see that in a second. All right, this right here today is the most important part for your homework, because that's how the calculator. That's how the calculator is going to give you the answers. And you have to know that, because from that, you're going to have to understand what to do with it when it gives you those answers that way.
Wait, why is tangent parentheses again?
Because it has asymptotes. They're undefined there, so it can't work with the inverse tangent value on undefined values. All right, so this part right here is calculator. Write that down. This is what the calculator. And here's the problem though. When we do these trig functions, we know that within one rotation, how many answers are there? 2. But the calculator is only going to give you what? 1. And it might not even give you 1 where you want it. Because if I say from 0 to 2 pi and it gives you a negative 1, you're going to be like, well, that sucks. I want positive answers. So you're going to have to either go get the other one or go get the other 2 the way you want it. All right? This first one is no solution. So you got that. You're good with the no solution one. All right, let's do one where it's not no solution, and let's not make it so fluffy. Let's make it more fluffy. And what I mean by fluffy, there'll be some algebra you have to do, and I'm not going to sit here and reteach algebra. So if you see this, here we go. Let's do cosine. 4 cosine x plus 3 equals, let's do 5. I might as well do 6 cosine x plus 7. All right, here's the rule of thumb. You ready? No matter what we do with trig equations, you always got to isolate it down to one trig expression. So I don't care how you do that. You learned 9th grade algebra, so how can you isolate this down to one trig equation?
Subtract 6 cosine x.
Yeah, you can move the 6 cosine x over, and what will you get if you move the 6 cosine x over? Negative 2 cosine x. No big deal there. Equals 4. I should totally make that an 8. Change that 7 into an 8. Because if I change it to, if I leave it a 7, it's going to work with the unit circle.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's nice.
So yeah, make it
5.
5. Divide by negative 2, what are you going to get?
Negative
Wait, is
5
this
x.
cosine an even function though? So it wouldn't matter?
No, that's not cosine of negative x. You're thinking cosine negative x.
Oh.
Okay? Inverse cosine? What does this mean? Another what problem? Another no solution. Okay? This one won't be no solution. Okay? All right, so you kind of see how to do some algebra tonight. Don't freak out on the algebra stuff. All right, that's the only algebra fluff lesson I'm going to give you today. So you're going to have to isolate the trig ratio. Now, let me give you one that actually makes. We're going to do 2 problems here that are pretty tricky. So get your calculator because now they're not going to be no solution. All right, so example 3 and 4. Here we go. Triggy. All right. Cosine. Let's do sine one first. Sine x. I'm going to go ahead and get it isolated. So there was some algebra you did first. It was magical. Okay. Now we're going to go negative 2/3. Here we go. Sine x equals negative 2/3. Now it's got a solution. But you need to understand what the calculator is telling you, and you need to understand that I want the answers between 0 to 2 pi. Here's what you're going to have to remember also from yesterday. This is 0 radians. This is pi over 2, but you need to know it in decimal form now. What was pi over 2 in decimal form? 1.57. That's going to be a big deal in a second. What about pi? 3.14. What about this? Don't do negative. 3 pi over 2 is what in decimal form? Come on. 4.71. And then what was 2 pi in decimal form? And that's because I want the answers between 0 and 2 pi. So keep that straight. Now I'm going to have to show you, reteach you how to use your reference angle all over again because I had to reteach last hour. They totally forgot how to use the reference angle. All right, let's first of all go ahead and do the calculator part of this. You're going to need to do the inverse sine of what? All right, so do that for me. Inverse sine of negative 2/3. Make sure your calculator's in radians or you're going to get a goofy answer.
It's still goofy.
Oh, they're all goofy now. All right, you're going to get a decimal, approximately negative point what? 7. Give me 2 decimals at least. 3. All right. Here's the problem with that answer. I can go ahead and tell you that's not even an answer I'll accept. Because what do I want my answers between? 0 to 2 pi. This is not an answer between 0 to 2 pi, so this is not what even I'm looking for. But this is all your calculator gives you because your calculator only gives you answers between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So you got to look at this and say, okay, it gave me negative 0.73. Where is negative 0.73? This would be 0 to negative 1.57, right, if you go backwards. Okay? So negative 0.73 is right here approximately. There's where that is. I need the reference angle off that guy. Reference angle is just the distance from an angle to the x-axis, so, and it's positive. So what is the reference angle? 0.73 is your reference angle. So so your reference angle, which is not too hard to figure out for this one. When it's cosine, it's a little trickier. 0.73 is your reference angle. So I need that because what I'm going to look for now, you ready? Here we go. I'm looking for where sine is negative between 0 to 2 pi. In what quadrants is sine negative between 0 to 2 pi? Quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Now some of you are already saying, well, wait a second, that was quadrant 4. You're right, good job. But that's not an answer between what? It might be quadrant 4, but it might not be the quadrant 4 answer you want because there's an infinite number of quadrant 4 answers. You got to give me the one I want. You got to give the AP exam the one they want. So I want the quadrant 4 answer that's between 0 to 2 pi. So here's how you have to do it. You ready? Here's where it gets weird. You got to use the reference angle appropriately. So now you got to go to quadrant 3 and figure out how to use a 0.73 reference angle. How are you going to use a 0.73 reference angle? Not subtract. Add it to what? Exactly. You're going to have to take pi plus pi, which is 3.14. You're tacking on 0.73. So just go pi plus 0.73. So actually do that. So pi plus 0.73, and I want the decimal. So what is it? What is it? 3.87? Okay, there's the first answer. Done. Quadrant 3 done. Quadrant 4 now.
Tack on 4.71 to 7.3.
Or 2 pi minus 7.
That's what I'm looking for. 2 pi, do not use the y-axis ever with reference angle. Guys, get that out of your head. You start using the y-axis, you'll start screwing it up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's not very consistent. The reason why you use the x-axis for a reference angle is because that's how we defined a reference angle, how far it is from what? We did not say how far it was from the y, we said how far it is from the x. So, so the next one will be 6.28 minus 0.73, so what do you get? 5 point what? 5.5. Now, people are like, well, what is 5.55? I don't know. It's an answer in quadrant 4. If you want to know what it is, 5.55, change it in degrees. Multiply by 180 and divide by pi. Somebody real quick. I think it's 306. I think it's 306 point something degrees. So, 318. Sorry, I was off. Okay? That's how you do this. We need to do one more real quick. Okay? That's done. That one's done. You got your 2 answers. Cosine one's the pain. I think cosine's worse. Tangent, same way. It'll be done same way as sine is. And you're going to have some algebra fluff you have to do first, where you're going to have to move things and isolate the trig ratio, but you know how to do algebra. All right, cosine 1 is the one that most people struggle with. Let's make sure it's negative. Positive you're not going to have a problem with. It's negative stuff that you have a problem with. All right, inverse cosine of negative 1/4. Quick. Got to be quick here. What are you going to give me? Give it to me. Give it to me. Come on. Inverse cosine of negative 1/4. 1 point what? 82. Sound good? Everybody get 1.82? Now, let's stop just a second. Let's go back and ask ourselves, did everybody get 1.82? Okay. We want to know where cosine was negative. What quadrants is cosine negative in? Quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Now remember, your calculator gives you answers between 0 and pi. That's actually good because it's going to give you one of your answers. Is this one of the answers? Yeah, 1.82 happens to be where? There's 1.57. Where is that? Quadrant 2. We got quadrant 2 answer. You've got one of the answers. How awesome. But you don't have quadrant 3, and you don't have a reference angle. You guys, you have to find the reference angle off of 1.82. You take, since you got 1.82 is right here, watch, there's 1.82. To find that reference angle, you got to go 3.14 minus 1.82. Do that. So find the reference angle. 3.14 minus 1.82. What do you get? But a lot of people want to say that's the answer. No, what is that? That's the reference angle, so I can go where? quadrant 3 and get my other answer. So how am I going to get my answer in quadrant 3? Pi plus 1.32. What do you get? You guys rock. This is taking it a step further. Tomorrow we're going to really jack it up. You guys actually did really good with that. I'm impressed.